So we're coming to the culmination of our program, and to end our afternoon's program, we've organized a panel discussion that will allow us to talk as a community about ovarian cancer and its challenges from the many perspectives we have represented here, from researchers to survivors to advocates to clinicians. So finally, to end this, we are going to have a moderator, Joyce Cole-Haywick. We are very lucky to have her come and join us and join the panel. Now, Joyce Cole-Haywick is best known as the Emmy Award-winning arts and entertainment critic for CBS Boston, and is currently lending her expertise as an arts advocate, motivational speaker, and cancer crusader. She's the president of the Boston Theater Critics Association, a member of the Boston Society of Film Critics and Boston Online Film Critics Associations. Joyce has covered local and national events from Boston and Broadway to Hollywood, reporting live from the Oscars, the Emmys, and the Grammys. Nationally, she co-hosted the syndicated movie review show Hot Ticket with Leonard Maltin, and was a continuing co-host on Roger Ebert and the Movies. Look for her arts and entertainment reviews online at betterafter50.com, I love that, and joyceschoices.com. Joyce is a 3-time cancer survivor, and she testified before Congress on the 20th anniversary of the National Cancer Act. This is something that is incredibly important because all of the work we talked about today is heavily supported by the government, and here, having congressmen hear directly from people like Joyce greatly influences our ability to achieve that kind of funding. So I'd very much like to welcome Joyce and to thank her for coming here and spending time. She's someone, I'm a personal fan. I actually, when I moved to Boston, she was one of the first voices I heard. So thank you, Joyce, and welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I feel like Paula, thank you. That was an incredible introduction. We're all on this circuit together. Paula, me, Ursula, the cancer circuit. I've spoken I've covered the Oscars, the Emmys, the Grammys, the Tonys, and now the Koch Institute Symposium for Bridging the Gap in Ovarian Cancer. Very glamorous subject, and I think what I want to do right now is welcome the whole panel up. So why don't we all take our seats? And I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves one by one, but you can applaud them as they take their seats. Great, you can hear me now. Ursula Matulonis, Marcella Del Carmen, Dr. Paula Hammond, Susan Patterson, Paige Gallagher, and Mimi Gallander. Big round of applause. We're going to start just by introducing ourselves and giving a little sense of what brings us here today. I know that this is the sort of the rounding out panel, then there are going to be some more speakers tonight, and I know you've had a lot of really interesting speakers this afternoon. I just caught the tail end of the short talk that was given and was already trying to figure out, where I fit in that little profile. My name is Joyce Cole-Haywick. My métier is really speaking, talking, critiquing movies, theater, performance, and telling stories about what I know. And what I know about is my personal experience. And I think what brings us all together and what ultimately brings me here today is to share my story. I think ultimately that is the only thing that any of us can really share with one another. So it's what I'm always very interested when we have a panel gathered together so that we can all sort of compare notes and spread the word about what we know. As Dr. Hammond synopsized, I'm a 3-time cancer survivor. 2 of those cancers were ovarian cancer, and what I just learned from the most recent short talk is that I fell the first time into the earliest stage, into that very narrow 90% window of people who are diagnosed in the very first stage of ovarian cancer. And we've got not a 90% stage, but 90% chance of complete recovery. And as you can see, I'm still here. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. The second time it came back, it was a little more difficult, but went through a lot of treatment, etc. And I think what brings me here really and truly is to hear what everybody has to say, to hear from you, and just to keep the ball rolling. I got an awful lot of help from a lot of people that I didn't know. And I vowed that when I got better, actually I didn't even consciously say this, but it is true. Once you recover, I think you feel so full of gratitude and positive energy that you just want to pass that on and tell what you know. So I am now, I can't even really believe this, Ursula, 25 years out, something like that. 1989, I finished up my last treatment and I'm still here. So there is lots of hope. This can happen. And when I was in a bed, not knowing what was going to happen to me that fall, when I didn't know my prognosis, I remember thinking, all I want to do is be able to take a walk in the woods next fall. You start to realize what's important to you and what isn't, and what really matters. I mean, we can't live at that edge all the time, but it's good to have as a touchstone. And I'm very grateful for all the strides that have been made since. So thank you for all that incredible research that you're doing. I'm addressing the last speaker. Thank you so much. That was really amazing. I can't wait for that urine test, okay? So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. That's why I'm here. Let's begin with Dr. Matalonis. She and I have done the Borscht Belt for a long time together. I'm calling it the circuit. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what brings you here, Ursula?
Thank you. Well, I was invited here to speak here today, and it's great to be here. I'm a medical oncologist at Dana-Farber, and I run our GYN oncology program there, and I spend all my days taking care of women with ovarian cancer and also thinking about better ways of how to treat this cancer. And really collaborate with basic scientists here at the Farber and the Longwood Center in Harvard Medical School, and then try to translate those findings into effective therapies, mostly around for active treatment for somebody who has ovarian cancer.
Great, thank you. Marcella or Marcella?
Marcella.
Marcella.
Thank you. My name is Marcela del Carmen. I'm a GYN oncologist. I'm at Mass General, and I was very excited and actually feel honored to be here amongst you all and in this panel. I have known Dr. Matalonis for a long time. I did my fellowship here, and I spend my clinical time also taking care of women with gynecological cancers, primarily surgical treatment. But over the course of the years, I've been lucky enough to collaborate with people like Ursula and Dr. Michael Beer, and I'm very interested in looking at innovative ways to treat this ovarian cancer, both surgically and also with better ways to deliver targeted therapies.
Thank you. Dr. Hammond, Paula, we've met many times.
Yes, we have. And I'm very excited as a new researcher, relatively new researcher to the field of ovarian cancer, to apply the tools of material science and engineering to create ways of treating ovarian cancer, in particular to see if we can address recurrent cancer, to see if we can address and understand how to use the genetic information we're gaining now in ovarian cancer to create personalized medicine approaches for ovarian cancer. And I'm also excited about seeing these things come to translation.
Thank you. Our next person on the panel, Susan Patterson. Hi, Susan.
Joyce, how are you?
Nice to see you.
You too. My name is Susan Patterson. I worked with Patty Franchi Flaherty back in 2006 to start Ovations for the Cure. And our focus has basically been patient support as well as education and awareness. And I'm excited to be here, and I'd like seeing people come out and learn more because there's more coming up every day.
Paige Gallagher, welcome.
Hi, I'm Paige Gallagher. I'm a sophomore at Dover Sherburne High School. I play field hockey and like to do theater, and like most kids my age, I like to hang out with my friends. I'm here today because I'm the daughter of an ovarian cancer survivor.
Well done, says the mother.
And here's her mom.
I'm Mimi Gallagher and the mother of this beautiful girl here. And thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I am a 2+ year survivor of ovarian cancer, and so honored and privileged to be here to share my story.
Thank you. And some of my family live in Sherburne, went to that wonderful high school there. Phenomenal resources. Nice to see you. Engelman, Susan Engelman. I don't know if you know her. And Rich Kulhawick. Oh, well, yeah. Thank you all. And before I go any further, thank you so much to the Koch Institute for facilitating this today. It's pretty a remarkable program. And Anna DeConning, thank you so much. The first question is perhaps, a little unusual, but that is, when you think about cancer, you don't think about silver linings. We want to accentuate the positive here today, and there's a lot of good news out there. But what would each of you say about what is the silver lining or the proudest moment or the thing that you learned when you either went through the disease or you treated somebody for the disease? What was that unexpected thing? Dr. Metalonis.
So it looks like I'm going to be the first one who gets the questions.
I'm going to mix it up, though, so look out.
So for me, what's going to drive this field forward are two things. One is that we don't think about ovarian cancer as just one cancer anymore. And I think that realization from a genomic standpoint, and certainly that was preceded by the understanding that clinically all ovarian cancer does not behave the same, is really going to lead to treatment improvements, because you would never think about treating breast cancer in one protocol as all breast cancer. So the way to think about this cancer is really to drill down to the specific subtypes of ovarian cancer, and then learn all you can about them genomically and genetically, and then plan clinical trials that test new therapies. And the second, I'm going to do two. The second is getting junior investigators, young, smart MD, PhDs into this field, because science is what's going to drive us and make improvements.
It's interesting that you say, it's not just one cancer that we think about. When people say, let's find a cure for cancer, I always remember cancer is not one thing. It's about 1,000 different diseases, and there's not going to be any one cure for cancer. But right now, my feeling is things are coming in at such an incredible rate from all over the globe by way of the internet, and just because of the proliferation of information and the speed with which we can share it, that I feel like at least 100 cures are around the corner for many, many cancers very soon. Dr. Carmen.
I think for me, just like what Ursula was saying, I think it's been the realization that ovarian cancer is not the same, and that we should have better ways to target and treat patients as individuals with ovarian cancer, not just as patients that have this general type of cancer. I think that's been a real change within my time in medicine. I think when I started medical school, certainly everyone was getting cisplatin and paclitaxel, and patients used to come in and get treated as inpatients, and we didn't even have good anti-nausea medication. I remember as a medical student being very impressed and taken aback by just the nausea and vomiting, and patients would go in and be put almost on a coma with Ativan because there was no really good anti-nausea medicine. And I've seen within my own career see the development and a change in the way that we think about cancer, the way that we think about treating cancer, and I think I'm excited for the future. My goal would be to have targeted therapy that is so good that it puts me out of a job where I don't have to operate anymore.
You described my history with chemotherapy back in the dark ages to a T. Cisplatin, carboplatin, Ativan, vomiting, etc. That was so bad, they had to knock me out for 2 days at a time in the hospital as an inpatient because I couldn't manage the symptoms. And Taxol was just a dream. It was this experimental drug from the bark of yew trees. And I thought, oh, wow, that's way off. And now that's the standard protocol. That's the standard protocol. And even so, I made it. So we're working hard. Dr. Hammond.
Yes, so proudest moments, for me, they come sort of day to day or week to week when I'm having conversations with my students and postdocs, and they are telling me about an exciting new development or progress. It makes me proud to know that they are highly vested in the process and that we're able to move things one step closer. So for me, it's being able to not only work on the problem and see that we're moving toward a positive solution, is to see the people in my laboratory owning that and becoming a part of that solution themselves. In terms of silver lining, if the cloud were, for example, the fact that when I first started reading about ovarian cancer and the statistics, I was learning that there had not been a large amount of progress over the past few decades. But the silver lining is that thanks in part to people in this room and to some of the people we've heard from today and across the country, there's been a kind of revolution, especially in the past several years, in understanding the genetics of ovarian cancer and the nature of the disease. And that creates this beautiful silver lining where we have now a much larger effort, I think, in this area. Because of this understanding, there have been more scientists, more engineers, and more clinical researchers becoming engaged in this problem. And so you're seeing that we're at the beginning of a huge rise, I think, in information and knowledge and technology that will be directed toward ovarian cancer. And I think that's extremely empowering and exciting.
Thank you. And ovarian cancer is now on the map in a certain way that it never was before. Is that your sense of it? I see
Absolutely.
that as a big silver lining.
Absolutely. The awareness of ovarian cancer, it seems to me, has greatly increased. And I know it's due to the efforts, again, of people in this room. But it's changing. The tide is changing, and that's something that's incredibly exciting.
Thank you. Susan?
I would say, not being a medical professional, but I have more, not a proudest moment, but a silver lining, is that I've met some absolutely amazing women that have just touched me in a way that I never thought possible. And then I've seen these women go through such a battle and such a fight and then turn around and say, what can I do to help? So I have seen a whole different side of human nature that has just made life so rewarding.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mimi?
I have a lot of these.
I mean, Paige, forgive me. Sorry.
I've had a lot of silver linings because I think this is a really big family disease, but I think that my two biggest ones are becoming closer with my family, and especially becoming closer with my sister, because before we were younger, before our mom got diagnosed, and we would fight a lot, but I think through the disease we really relied on each other, and now we have a really good relationship, which I'm very happy about. And then I'm gonna say two, actually. My other one is helping other people. I know a lot of people my age who have somebody in their life who has been diagnosed with cancer, and it's just very happy for me to be able to help them out and to try to coach them almost through what to feel and to have somebody to relate to who has been in their position.
Thank you.
Well done, daughter.
Is it true? Do you have a better relationship now?
Well, I think cancer can do one of two things in a family. It can either bring you together, or it can sort of tear you apart a little bit. And I think we were very blessed. I have an amazing husband who's sitting in the front row.
Where are you, husband?
He didn't miss one appointment, not one. So I think we got closer. We were always close, though. But I know for me, I was 48 when I was diagnosed, and it was a complete and utter shock, to say the least. And when you talk about silver linings, there are a couple for me. One is that you really do learn what's important. It's not the car you drive, it's not the house you have, it's not the clothes you wear, it's not the shoes you have on. It's the people in your life. It's the love. It's the great physicians that take care of you. It's the friends that cook for you even when you don't want them to. It's the mother that sleeps in the hospital when you're there. You just really realize how blessed you are when you're fighting for your life. A silver lining for me, for sure, is that I absolutely feel joy in a way that I didn't before. I think because I've seen what can happen, I just really am so focused on all the beauty in my life and all of the good in my life, and especially this girl and her sister.
So while we're on that subject, if you could, the next question is really about if I could. You know, if you could go back, if there was something that you knew, that you know now that you didn't know then, or what is it that you wish for or hope for?
Oh, where do I begin?
I know.
Well, what do I wish for? Certainly is for my daughters to never, ever.
And that's got to
Be
be
in this
in your
position.
head in terms of the genetics of the situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, I pray for all women who are faced with this disease. But I pray that all of the things we talked about today will come to fruition, that we'll find early diagnostic testing so that you don't get diagnosed at stage 3C.
Was that your stage?
That was my stage.
Wow.
You know, so clearly that is the biggest thing, to be diagnosed early and then to have great treatment options.
What about you, Paige?
Well, similar to my mom, I definitely think that the only thing I wish for is to find a cure and to find a way to catch the disease in its early stages, because it's something that's very prevalent in my life, which I think is unusual for kids my age. And as much as I try to stay positive and focused, it can sometimes get in the way. But I think being here and seeing all of the different technologies and science that goes on, it just makes me feel so good and just makes me feel proud.
Can I say one other thing too? You know, you asked about proudest moments, and I have two that really stick out. And the first is December 12th, 2012. It was the day I finished IP chemotherapy, which was the hardest thing I have ever done in my entire life. And I lived to tell, which feels really good. The second thing I'm really proud of is, as a mom, when I was diagnosed, it was very hard because I wanted so badly to protect my children from this. I didn't want them to feel frightened. I didn't want them to worry. And I think one of the things I did as a mom I'm really proud of, I said to my, you know, clearly when I told my kids, you know, that I was sick and that I had cancer, one of the things, the first thing they said to me was, "Are you going to die?" And I didn't know the answer. And so what I said to the kids was, "I'm not planning on it, and I'm going to do everything in my power to fight this. And I have great doctors that are going to help me do that. But if the doctors ever tell me that I'm not going to make it, you will be the first people to know, because it will be my job to help you prepare for that." And I think by saying that and being open about it, my kids were able to go on and be kids. I said, let me take the worry. That's my job as a mom. Your job is to be the teenager. Without the back talk. But to be the teenager and to go and do all the things that kids do, and let me take the job of fighting it, and I will keep you posted every step of the way. And I think Paige will tell you, I hope, that that was very freeing for her.
Yeah, very much. It's what kept me from every single day, like, stopping, and being so open about it helped me to live my life, but also still be concerned with what was going on. It was, like you said, it was very freeing.
Thank you. So you didn't find that burdensome to hear that?
Oh, no, I definitely think it was burdensome, but I think that... Oh, great. I know. I just think that it...
But it would have been harder not to hear.
It would have been... I would have felt in the dark and confused if...
Yeah.
And,
I mean,
and
on some
scared
level,
if
there's
she
no
hadn't
avoiding
told
the
me
truth, but-
yes.
It was a limited burdensome.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Because it was burdensome no matter what.
Yeah.
Your mother has cancer. So there's a burden there that can't be eliminated. But what I wanted to try to remove from them was the worry that I was going to die.
Yeah.
I wanted them to know that I would never hide that from them.
Yeah.
And so that if the doctors had indicated that that was a real possibility, that they would know, so that they, at least for the time being, could take it off their plate.
I like your answer. Are you going to die? I'm not planning on
I'm
it.
not planning
I
on it.
like that. And that mindset is very important.
Very true.
Susan, what about you in terms of the work that you do with Ovations? If I could, what's your wish? What's your fondest wish?
Well, of course, a cure.
That
Yeah.
goes without saying. But one of the things we used to talk about back in 2006 when Patty was still around is we wanted people to talk about ovarian cancer as much as people talked about breast cancer. Because the more we talked about it, the more we became aware of it, and people felt open discussing it. Then when people went out and talked and raised money, they would understand what was happening, and we would be able to make a difference.
Right. I knew Patty pretty well and was there at the very beginning of Ovations,
Remember.
at the luncheon where she came up with the idea, and this
Shoes.
was a big, big idea for her, that nobody knew how prevalent ovarian cancer was, and no one talked about it, and she was very competitive about wanting to raise a lot of money,
and
get that
talk a
word
lot.
out and raise the profile and eradicate this disease, which I think is a lot more common and prevalent than people suspect.
I agree 100%, yes.
That's what I think,
Yep.
although the doctors will have to speak to that. Maybe we don't even have really solid numbers on that yet. But Dr. Del Carmen, what is your thinking? Oh, sorry, or Paula. Either one, jump in.
All right. If I could, I would develop technologies that help us turn the corner on ovarian cancer, where we're looking at 90% or greater survival rates and not the averages that we talked about today. And if I could, I would be engaged in these translational conversations with clinicians, but also with patients, hearing about what they're experiencing does influence how we shape our technologies and our medicine and what form it comes in and how it's deployed. And this is actually part of what if I could, is having an opportunity to hear from the audience and from the panelists today. If I could, I would have in 10 years no conversations where someone says they're diagnosed in the late stage. We would already have detection methods that would allow us to be able to treat cancer, and we'd have the genetic information to prevent any recurrence. So those are my if I coulds.
I'm with you. Dr. Del Carmen.
I think for me, I echo what people have said before. I think it would be to essentially, come to the end of my career, and when you sort of think of having medical students or fellows or residents say, like when I started medicine, this was an incurable cancer, and look where we've come. I think that would be a tremendous thing and a tremendous legacy that we could all leave behind, where everyone with ovarian cancer survives. I think on a shorter term, one of my big goals is to increase the awareness of ovarian cancer and how there are data that outcomes for women today are different if you go to an expert and you go to a high volume place. We're very lucky in Boston because there are so many of us who are tripping over one another. But
Isn't that great?
Which is great, but when you look at the distribution of care in the United States, Rob Bristow at UC Irvine has written a lot about disparities of access to care and how for a lot of women in the US, it's still really hard to get to an expert, and they're having their surgery and their chemo done by people that are not doing it often, and outcomes are different. So I think for me, just to be able to increase awareness so that everyone with ovarian cancer has a fighting chance and gets to an expert would be another dream.
Yeah. Ursula?
Okay, so I had time to think about this question, so thank you guys. For me, because what I think about a lot are really thinking about new targeted therapies for ovarian cancer. So I'm going to put a shout out to Dr. Weinberg, who's sitting in the back, who has written, there he goes, these incredible papers that talk about the complexity of cancer. And that's what happens in ovarian cancer. It's not just driven by one mutation like occurs in lung cancer or other types of cancers like breast cancer, where you can find the estrogen receptor that's overexpressed. So I think we really do need to target this, but think about it in lots of different ways. Putting drugs that target the immune system together with drugs that impair DNA repair, that target the PI3 kinase pathway. So these are all important aspects of ovarian cancer that make an ovarian cancer cell do what it does. And I'm going to put another shout out to Stand Up for Cancer. I am getting to the point here. Stand Up to Cancer gave us money. Dr. Fode's here from SUTC. To help us put together a PARP inhibitor made by one company along with a PI3 kinase inhibitor made from another company. And my wish is that we can go to different drug companies and gain access to their medications and not worry about the business side. Obviously, the business side is important, but try to make those barriers to combining different therapies together less. So that we can, do a better job with this ovarian cancer problem, because it's going to take several different therapies together and not just one drug.
Yeah, and the bureaucracy is a bear. It really is.
True.
And the business of it, et cetera. And this is everywhere in all parts of our life. And that's a whole other panel. But right now, let's open this up to the audience. And it's so funny. I see so many familiar faces here, people I've seen at lots of symposiums and panels and talks with different organizations. If you could right now formulate a question, raise your hand, and direct it to somebody specific on the panel if you can. About anything at all that we've talked about, or anything that we even haven't raised that maybe you're curious about. Yes, we have people with mics ready to circulate.
So this is a question for Mimi, and maybe too for Paige. And we talked a little bit earlier about it's important for the scientists to hear the perspective of the survivor and the family. But I'm interested in your perspective of the science. So I don't know what you do for a living. You're a student still learning, but I don't know how much you knew before you got into this, but I'm curious how much you know now. Because we lived that life, so I'm curious how it has affected you.
I knew nothing. I mean, I knew that my mother's mother had passed away of ovarian cancer in her 70s, being diagnosed in her 60s. I knew enough to ask for the CA-125 blood test, but because my mother fortunately was not ever diagnosed with cancer, it wasn't deemed that I had a strong enough family history to have been considered to even get the disease. But now that I have been diagnosed, I hope I know a little bit more. Not nearly as much as I've learned since I've learned today. I have a slightly better understanding of the CA-125 and all the terms that go with ovarian cancer. I have to say, I tried very hard to not go on the internet or do anything, because the statistics are really grim. Yeah. And one thing that my physician always really emphasized to me is that you are you. You are not a statistic. You are a person with your own genetic code. And how you will react will be unique to who you are. And I try to stay really, really focused on that, because I think you can get too bogged down in information out there that may or may not be accurate. You can look at it and say, oh, but that could be me, but that... I try to keep blinders on, but I will tell you today was hugely uplifting for me. Seeing all of the work that's being done and the advancements that are being made, it just completely, as a mother especially, warms my heart, because my biggest worry is not even necessarily for myself, but it's for these guys. It's for making sure that Paige and my younger daughter Caroline never are faced with this. Mm-hmm. And so go get them, doctors.
And another question right here. Here we go. Thank you.
So this is for Dr. Matatoulis.
I'm sorry?
Dr. Matatoulis. So first of all, I just want to just say that, I have my hopes, my dreams, and I have goals. And I'm very positive. Sometimes I don't even feel like I have cancer. So that's a beautiful thing. 2.5 years fighting, have not been in remission as of yet. So if I've had diagnosed with 1C fallopian tube cancer, usually that's early stage. And if I have a tumor that comes back within 5 months, why is it they say that it's not going to go back into remission? I've never had that opportunity, actually.
So, as you've heard today already, unfortunately, not all stage 1 and 2 cancers disappear forever after chemotherapy. And because the cells shed from the fallopian tube out into the rest of the abdomen, Those cells can get into lots of nooks and crannies. You also heard from Peter that where they land, they can act differently. Maybe some not so responsive to chemotherapy, some more responsive to chemotherapy, as well as really undergoing genetic changes. So unfortunately, it can happen. And we are all as disappointed as you are. But clearly, we're trying to come up with new therapies, new directions, really taking a look at the genetics of your cancer to do a better job.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would say just because you recurred doesn't mean that you won't get past that recurrence. I recurred after stage 1A, recurred a year and a half later, and then it was either 1C or 2A, and I recovered from that. So
I feel very
it can
positive.
happen.
There's an
Do.
awful lot going on out
Do.
there. And
You need
I
to
feel
hear
very
that.
positive. So, and I have 2 young kids, so I can't go anywhere until I'm a grandmother.
You're not planning on it.
Oh, I after college, I told.
Questions? There's a question, and there's a question. Okay.
Hello. You did say it was a question for another time, but I was moved by your saying not all cancers are the same, and they should be treated differently. Do you have hopes of getting past the bureaucratic barrier that says that there is a gold standard for treating ovarian cancer?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And I think for me, working with the Stand Up to Cancer team and getting this trial up and off the ground was very hopeful. I learned a lot in the process working with different companies, but also the funding is key, and I know that that's been spoken about here today as well, is having that access to funding so that we can do what we want to, what makes sense for patients and what's the best science, and not have to worry about other agendas. So again, that is my dream. I'm gonna let my colleagues comment on this as well.
I mean, I think we're getting there. I think that it's requiring a change in the whole sort of shift in paradigm, so to speak, because I think, even people in medicine, we're sort of trained as oncologists that all cancers are the same. And I think this concept of, targeted therapy, personalized medicine, however you want to call it, but that these cancers are not the same. I think it is taking on. I would say in the last 5 years, we're beginning to reframe how we think about cancer and how we think about treating patients. And I think it's also changing the way that science is done and the way that research are being designed and executed. So I think we're getting there. I think it's required changing our paradigm and shifting to a different gear.
And I'm especially excited about the use of siRNA and other methods of addressing all of these genetic differences, because one of the exciting things we talked about a little earlier today is that even if we understand the genetics, using traditional methods, we could only develop medicines or therapeutics that could bind to very specific protein pockets. Now that we understand and are learning how to handle ways to turn off genes without having to develop a new molecule, using siRNA, we can address this much broader range of targets. And I think this is one of the things that, from learning from the clinical community, what these genetic differences are, and understanding and narrowing them, will have a much better arsenal to be able to address cancer, in particular, to address the recurrent types. So I'm excited about that.
Mm-hmm. And I think we have a question right down here in the middle aisle. Here we go. And then one here. Yeah.
I agree that there's a lot of enthusiasm and reason for enthusiasm and excitement, that there are all kinds of things going on with a cancer that was sort of a lesser known cancer. But then within that community, I know that there are survivors who feel like their types of ovarian cancer may be sort of the orphan disease of the ovarian cancer community. So I just, like to think about people being mindful, and I realize there's a business aspect and the drug companies and all kinds of things, but it is kind of an area that I hear in the survivor community. Well, what about my kind, which isn't being researched or isn't responding in the same way?
I think your point is really well taken, and I think that I was at the FDA trying to get a PARP inhibitor approved through the ODAC committee, and I was struck by the few advocacy groups for ovarian cancer that came down. Again, this is a special type of ovarian cancer, BRCA positive ovarian cancer, but yeah, I know. I think it's true. I think as a cancer, advocacy groups should work together. Certainly to try to get drugs approved, to get more funding, to get the word out, and that's really critical to make things happen.
Yeah, it's the squeaky wheel. I mean, this is always true. We have a question right here.
I just wanted to ask, in terms of serous ovarian cancer, we talk about stage 1, 2, and 3, and yet with Hodgkin's disease and some of the other disease systems, those stages have timelines and steps and sequences that don't appear to guide the difference between stage 1 and stage 4 ovarian cancer. When they did the British studies using transvaginal ultrasound, they found more ovarian cancers that way, but they weren't early stage. So I'm just curious to know, is there any real breakthrough on the horizon for the processes of progression within that serous ovarian cancer model?
I think the staging for ovarian cancer has never made any sense to me. I have to just sort of say that. For full disclosure, English is my second language, but even in Spanish, it's never made any sense. Because it spreads, when you think of cancers, cancers can spread either through the bloodstream or the lymphatics or by direct contact. And ovarian cancer likes to spread by all three, but prefers to spread by direct contact. So to me, as a surgeon, and again, we're not the smartest people in medical school, but it just seems to me that it's one cavity. So the abdomen and the pelvis are one cavity. So the distinction between stage 2, confined to the pelvis, and stage 3, which involves the upper abdomen, seems to me like it's very artificial. And so I think that as we understand more about the molecular sort of, mechanisms and the molecular pathways of these cancers, I think we'll be a lot smarter, and we'll have probably better boxes to put these cancers in that will help us understand them better.
Yeah, no, I would agree, and I think I agree. I think as the cells are shedding from the fallopian tube, they're spreading and disseminating in the abdomen. So early screening is certainly an incredible goal that we have to achieve, but it's going to be a difficult one.
Yeah.
But I also think that the genetic changes that happen from a normal cell to a cancer cell are definitely being worked out, that allow the cell to change and then to break away and then to travel and then metastasize. So that's definitely on its way in ovarian cancer.
Mm-hmm. And we have a question here, right here, this woman in blue, and then back there. Yeah.
So we've heard about BRCA a couple times today, but no one's mentioned Lynch syndrome. And I was wondering if there were any studies here on Lynch in ovarian. And also we talked about the statistics of how many ovarian cancers each year. Mm-hmm. How many of those are genetic, either BRCA or Lynch?
What is Lynch syndrome?
So Lynch syndrome is a spectrum of cancers that include colorectal cancer, endometrial cancer, uterine cancer, and ovary cancer. And there are a few others sneak in there as well. But basically they occur because of defects in DNA repair genes, mismatch repair genes. So it's interesting. The BRCA ends up being a target for drugs because the cells can't have an Achilles heel within DNA repair. Lynch is a little bit different, and we've mostly used it for identification of individuals who are at high risk. Mm-hmm. And in terms of the risk of ovary cancer, certainly from a genetic risk, BRCA is number one, and the Lynch syndrome is a small minority.
Mm-hmm. We have a question in the back, right there, this blonde woman right there. And then we have one here. Yeah.
Just following on from that question before about hereditary ovarian cancer, I was just wondering if there was any developments in terms of preventative surgery, or what age people are recommending to have preventative surgery for ovarian cancers.
You mean prophylactically, hysterectomies, et cetera, et cetera? That's an interesting question.
So we have guidelines, and certainly I think as we learn more about the genetics of ovarian cancer or fallopian tube cancer, however you want to call it, I think those guidelines will change. Right now, if you have a BRCA1 or 2 mutation, the guideline would suggest or support that as soon as you're done having children, and hopefully no later than age 40, or depending on the specific family, if there's actually an incident case of cancer of the ovary, we want to know the age of that diagnosis, and then potentially 10 years younger, we really want to start thinking about risk-reducing surgery, and that right now includes removing the ovaries and the fallopian tubes laparoscopically or with minimally invasive surgery. There are emerging data about what the risk may be of developing uterine cancer in BRCA mutation carriers, but that data are not, I would say, solid enough to have changed the recommendations. Certainly for women with the Lynch 2 syndrome, the recommendation would include also taking out the uterus because, as Dr. Matlona said, they also carry a higher risk of developing uterine cancer. I think the issue, that comes up, and although I'm a big supporter in the absence of any screening for risk-reducing surgery, is the fact that it's a pretty difficult surgery to go through because it puts you in surgical menopause, and there's all these other things that come from that, including bone density loss, potentially cardiac risk. So, I think for me in the future, the goal would be, again, early detection and a way to understand the molecular drivers, whether, it's detecting something before it becomes invasive, like a precancer cell or a pre-invasive change that you could detect with some kind of test that would allow you to triage better instead of just taking, I can tell you that I operate 2 to 3 days a week, and I probably do somewhere between 3 to 4 risk-reducing surgeries a week, and you've got to do it because it's the only thing we can offer at this point, but I hope for the day that we have something better.
Mm-hmm. And one last question here.
My question is for Paige. I think it's probably an understatement to say that it's hard to go to middle school and high school these days, and if you add your mom's diagnosis to that, how did you go to school every day and stay positive and then come home and stay positive?
I think that was one of my biggest challenges, was just staying positive throughout the day and throughout every day. And I think that each day was different. Some days it would just hit you harder, and some days it would just be easier to go to school. I think really one of the biggest challenges is I wanted the disease to sort of stay at home almost. Like when I wanted to go to school and just be out in public and not have people constantly asking me. Like, I just have so many memories of going to friends' birthday parties, and the parents will pull me aside and be like, "How are you?" And I'm just trying to go to your kid's birthday party. Like, I don't want to talk about this. So,
these well-meaning adults.
Yeah. But to end on a positive note, it just showed you how much people cared about you and how, your friends love you and are just constantly there and trying to help you in any way possible.
Thank you, Paige. My daughter would have said the same thing. Enough already. I'm curious, I have a question for the audience. How many people here have had ovarian cancer or are currently dealing with ovarian cancer? Raise your hand. I just want to know who we're talking to. Okay. Thank you. So that's going to lead me right to my last question, which is for the panel, and anybody who wants to jump in and answer this. What is the most important thing that you want this audience to take away from what we've said here today and from the entire symposium today? The one takeaway. Okay, maybe two, but keep it short. Get to the essence. Yes.
Okay, I'll do two, because I do have two. First, for all of the professionals in this building who are working so tirelessly and diligently to move forward with finding early detection and a cure, first, a heartfelt thanks, and also, if you will, on those days where you're just exhausted and you've looked at it 1,000 times and you don't even have ovaries, maybe, think of me and think of my daughter, because you're doing it for us. You know, you're doing it for me. Hopefully I'll stay healthy for a long, long time and get to meet those grandchildren that I hope to have. But you're especially doing it for this girl here and her sister and all those like her. So that would be the first thing. For the women that are fighting it, I think I would say, keep on keeping on. It's a hard road. As I said, I was diagnosed with stage 3C. And, you know, if you look at those awful charts, that's not the place you wanted to land, for sure. But here I am today, 2+ years. I am cancer-free, and I have not had a recurrence. Knock on something. And I just think, you know, one day at a time. Take it one day at a time. Try to enjoy the day the best you can, because worrying certainly isn't going to change what happens tomorrow. And just believe.
I think my big take-home message is that things do go back to normal, and that there are silver linings, and that although this disease is tough for everyone, for the family, for the patient, for just anybody related, there are silver linings and there are things that are good that come out of it. And if you can try to focus on those and try to keep with those positive thoughts, it'll really affect you in a positive way.
I think my take-home message would be basically talk about it, raise awareness, educate, pass out wristbands, brochures, whatever, make people pay attention, and always remember you're not alone. There's always somebody there for you. You just have to look around.
As an academic researcher, sort of representing all of the scientists and engineers who are working on this problem, my message is that we care. We care about finding a solution. We respect hugely the ovarian cancer survivors. We hugely respect the advocates, and we want to learn from you. We want to hear from you, and we want to make a difference by finding a cure.
I think, you know, I see myself pretty much as an advocate for my patients. You know, I take care of women with ovarian cancer day in and day out, and I would say for me it would be a message to the scientific community that, you know, in my own career in medicine or my time in medicine, I've seen huge, you know, advances made in treating this cancer, and I would encourage them to continue to do the work that they're doing because it is making a difference. And then I think to the women out there and the families out there that are having to face this every day, I think that to continue the advocacy that you're doing is also very important. When you look at the research dollars that go into breast cancer research and then you look at what goes into ovarian cancer, the difference is pretty huge. And I think that to be able to support the first point, which is to have these brilliant minds continue to work on a cure or early detection, it's going to require funding and advocacy. So get out there and keep doing what you're doing because it's also making a big difference.
Yeah, I would. One of my two is going to be exactly what Marcella says, and that's really being advocates. And you know, women with ovarian cancer need to be advocates. Families need to be advocates. Friends need to be advocates, and we are advocates. We need more funding for science because, again, that's the way that we'll make inroads into this cancer. And then secondly, and I'm going to steal Joyce's line about second opinions. You didn't mention that at all.
Oh, I'm giving a talk tonight.
Okay, sorry. So I'm going to preview for it. But I think if you have a cancer and you're not certain that things are going the right way, I think getting a second opinion in an academic center for a pathology review, to have some other eyes take a look at what's going on, I think is really important.
And I second that, absolutely. And I'm gonna tell you what my takeaway is, and I want to end on a very uplifting note here. Just remember this, and this is the big picture. Any of us could be hit by a truck tomorrow. And by that I mean we all have, in some large sense, the same chance. No one knows when they get up in the morning where it's all gonna go. I say live in the moment, be strong, fight hard, and love one another. We are all in this thing together. Thank you, and thank you to our panel.